In this video, we're talking all about lesson planning and how it relates to retention, how to do it, and how to make sure it boosts the quality of your lessons. Because in regards to retention, we want to make sure we have a great product. In business, you've got to have a great product. Our product is music lessons, and if we don't have well-planned lessons, people can tell. It reduces the quality, people quit, and that affects the money that goes into your pocket. So let's prioritize lesson planning. Don't skip this one because you think it's boring. There'll be some good tips in here for either reminders for yourself or further professional development, or this will serve as something that you can use as a little workshop for your own teachers and team so you can help them raise the standard if it's not where you are currently happy with. So let's start with a fun quote that one of our teachers, Aaron, came up with and shared at one of our team conferences one day when he talked about lesson planning. He was quite good at preparing really good, well-written lesson plans, and he did a little talk and he said, right, today I'm going to talk to you about the 6 Ps. You might have heard this saying before, and it had us all laughing, and it became this little mantra for our school, and the 6 Ps was: prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. So prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. And of course that applies to all areas of life, but it applies to music lessons. If you have not done any prior preparation for your lessons, I'm not going to use this crass term, but you're going to have poor lesson in many cases, right? And students can tell, a lot of them, if the teacher is organized, or if they're just winging it. You probably can think of teachers in your past who you could tell this teacher is super organized and prepared and had great notes and resources, and this teacher always just appeared like they were just flustered and distracted and flying by the seat of their pants, being disorganized, right? And we feel a certain way when we're being taught like that. We kind of feel like people are wasting our time, that they're a little bit lazy. I can think of university teachers where I think, man, that guy, if he was working at my school, he would have been fired. We don't want to have people like that. We want to have the high quality, and so we want to make sure lesson planning is part of the culture of our teachers, right? And we're going to talk about how you do that, because you might be thinking, oh, this is going to be so expensive. Don't worry, we'll come to some strategies around that soon, but I want to encourage you with a few things before we get into some of that practical stuff. Number one, don't let your team just drift into a culture where they just show up and wing lessons without any planning. Don't let your culture drift to that. That's not cool. It's not okay. Number two, if you do create a culture of just winging it, it's not as effective as getting planned results, and retention rates will suffer because of it. They may not suffer immediately, but if all your teachers are unprepared, the retention rates will drop over time, right? Next thing, if you don't have teachers and you just teach on your own, you need to develop this simple lesson planning discipline yourself, because if you are going to grow a team, you need to be able to model them, these practices, and show your teachers this is how we do it and this is why we do it. So that's really important if you are still teaching on your own. Final tip I want to give you is that as you scale your music school, you need to have systems and procedures, and one of the most important procedures that your teachers are going to need to follow is knowing that your school has a professional service, and one of the things that keeps you professional is organizing your lesson plans. So a couple extra points I want to give you as well is that these are some of the pros, right? So these are the benefits. We've talked about how it's going to increase retention. We're obviously within the retention module, but there's a few other things. Lesson planning actually makes the teachers' jobs way easier. It's kind of like following a well thought out recipe to produce, something satisfying. It's much easier to do your job if the lessons are planned. Next thing is that your lessons look and they feel more professional, as we've discussed, and it's very obvious to all the people watching. So whether that's the students in the class, the parents sitting and watching, they can visibly see you're prepared and they're getting value for money. Next, the students have a really clear direction of where they're headed when there's lesson plans, and they're told at the start, hey, right, today we're going to be doing X, Y, Z, and the goal for today is to be able to play this without stopping. They go, oh, great, I'm told where I'm going to go, and they're not just guessing all the time what's coming next. And there's a level of comfort there for even for you. Think the start of this video, I told you here's where we're heading, here's what we're talking about, and here's why it's important. Same sort of thing with kicking off a lesson. Another thing, if a student is sick and your teacher has actually done a basic lesson plan or has notes or overviews of what that student is working on, any kind of relief teacher covering that lesson when the teacher's sick has such an easier job. And so then again, higher quality of your product and service, because they've got the notes, they can follow it. They don't have to sit down and spend the first 5 minutes going, so what have you been working on? Where are you at? What do you want to do today? Just looks bad, right? And so when a teacher would call in sick at our school, we would say, awesome, can you just double check all your lesson notes are up to date for that person, so the covering teacher can jump in and see exactly where they should pick up from. And the expectation was that those lesson notes would be up to date. And at our school, we even had each team. So we had our schools team going out into schools during the day, and then we'd have our on-site team coming in for the afternoon, evening lessons. And each team would actually have a 15 to 20-minute gap in their timetable where they were physically writing in the notes. So for the schools team, it would be at the end of the day where they're coming in, they'd done notes through the day, but they were making sure that they had all the notes complete before they could finish, and they'd be sitting there with their manager. And for the sort of on-site building teachers, they would do that at the end of their shift before heading home as well. So super important stuff. One other thing that's really important that I'll just give you, final thing, is that you or your admin person can very easily access the notes if they ever need to send them to a student, parent, or team member for any reason, right? And so they don't need to come and bother you and go, hey, Cindy's mum has asked for the notes on what she's working on at the moment. Can you send me a brief description so I can type it up and send it to her? There's none of that. You just go to the student's little file, copy it, and go, here we go. And for us, we had MusicBiz software, and so that's where we kept our lesson notes for students. And so the parents actually had a little portal login, so we could just give them a standard email which says, hey, here's how you log in to view your teacher notes and other information. So again, you're solving all these admin problems as well, reducing the amount of time that you have to spend on these things, making your school run smoother and look much more professional. So let's talk about what is in a good lesson plan. And you guys are amazing teachers, so we're not going to go into massive depth here, but the main thing for those that are starting out and they've never done a lesson plan before, there's 3 basic steps to having a great lesson, right? Number 1 is you want to start with hey, what is the learning outcome for today, and the purpose of the lesson? What is it that you want the student to achieve, and why are we doing it, right? So you might start with, if I'm a drummer, so hey, today we're learning to play Billie Jean by Michael Jackson, and we are going to be learning to play this beat called Rock Beat 1. We're going to be trying to get it up to the speed of the song, and we're going to try and be able to play it in time with the music for the whole of the first verse and the chorus. That is our big goal today, right? That's step 1. What is the big overview outcome for the lesson? Doesn't need to be hard. You could write that in just one line. Be able to play the first verse and chorus of Billie Jean in time to the music. That's it, right? Step 2, you want to think about what are all the steps that it's going to take for that student to get those learning outcomes. So if I was doing it for the drums, you might not be a drummer, but you get the point. I'd say, okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to refresh how to hold the sticks. We're going to warm up with some single strokes and some double strokes on the snare drum. We are going to look at Rock Beat 1, and we're going to start slow at 60 BPM, and we're going to slowly speed it up to the level of the song. I'm not sure what it is, maybe 110, 120 or something. And so we're going to do a game where we're going to try and challenge and move the metronome up every 5 beats per minute. That becomes a game and a challenge to get the beat. Then we're going to focus on playing the beat in time with the music. And then we're going to try and complete a whole verse and then a whole chorus and stagger that, right? So that's step 2, is think about how they're going to achieve the big outcome and what are the steps. And step 3 is to basically plan, and I've sort of combined a little bit of point 2 there, plan the appropriate kind of we'd call them learning activities, or the steps that the students can achieve along the way. So for instance, the single stroke roll, you might say, an achievement would be able to play it really smoothly quiet and loud. So there's a little exercise that they would tick off. So you might just write, demonstrate different dynamics. The next thing might be able to play the beat from 60 BPM to 100 BPM, and you make little tick boxes. And so in the lesson, they're ticking off those little boxes. You get the idea, right? We're starting to think in those 3 steps. What is the big picture outcome they're working towards? What are the main sort of steps they're going to do to get there? And then what are the little actions that they're going to tick off along the way, so they feel like, oh yeah, I've accomplished something. So even if they don't get to that full outcome, they might have been able to play the song at 80 BPM. You may have even used an app, like there's a great app, Moises.com, and that's an app where you can actually slow the music down. There's other apps for that. So you might take a song that's 110 BPM, you might slow it down to 80, and they tick that off. So they still feel the sense of progress. So lesson planning does not have to be hugely complicated, but it needs to have a bit of a direction, some steps, and I'm going to give you a few lesson planning tips that are going to help you as well now. So first things to know is people overplan lessons all the time. You got to be realistic about the timing and how long it's going to take to get through everything. Reflect on the tasks that you're doing with the student, to make tweaks, to work on timing and get things more accurate. Things take a long time, so don't cram 4 hours worth of stuff into a 30-minute lesson or 45-minute lesson, right? So don't over prepare too much. Next thing is keep a list of games and activities that you can kind of pull them out again if you need them, right? So that idea of speeding a song up or slowing it down, that's a game or activity, right? See how fast you can do it. See how hard it is to do it really slow at 50 BPM. And there's lots of other rhythm games and scale games, and you'll have your own bag of tricks. Next thing is make sure that the lessons kind of flow in a logical sequence. Obviously you don't want to launch straight into the hardest challenge of the lesson first without kind of like warming up and getting into it. Just use your common sense there. And as I go through this, these are all things that we would train our teachers on. We'll talk more about teacher training in Module 6 and building our Rockstar team. But this is, and you've got all the notes below this video as well. So if you ever want to teach this live to your teachers, remember this is the sort of stuff that we would be teaching in our kind of teacher training. So as we're building new teachers into our music school, we're literally taking them through these bullet points that I'm reading you today. Next thing, we would tell teachers, be prepared for things not to go to plan, right? Be prepared to adapt. And so we would workshop these scenarios like, hey, what are you going to do if your student forgets their books, right? What will you do if some of the gear breaks? If you're like, I don't know, teaching the drums and all of a sudden there's no cymbals, right? And so you've got to come up with something different. So think through what are the logical things, if there's no guitar lead, or if the student shows up with a friend to do the lesson as well and they're at 2 different levels, these sorts of things. Next thing is use a range of appropriate teaching strategies. Don't always stick to the same ones, so don't get stuck into the same 5 activities over and over, so it becomes this kind of religious routine of, okay, we do 2 minutes of scales, then we do 10 minutes of ear training, and then we do sight reading, and on it goes. Like, make it fun, mix it up, and just make sure that the lesson kind of smoothly transitions between the different sections so people don't lose focus. Next thing is younger kids, we've generally found they need more sections within a lesson, so keep them moving with games, challenges, sitting, standing up, reading, playing, solo time, teacher demonstrations, all that sort of stuff. So we would train our teachers to be able to think like this, to go, all right, you can see that kid there and that kid there, their eyes are kind of wandering, they're getting a little bit bored. That's the moment where you have to read the room and go, all right, guys, everyone stand up. Okay, now we're going to do this little rhythm game for 30 seconds before we move into our next task. Okay, and so you're changing, their posture, getting them moving, and refocusing them into the next section. So again, self-awareness as a teacher is a big one, to go, yes, I've made this lesson time and I've said that I'm going to do 5 minutes of this, 12 minutes of this, 10 minutes of this, but if I'm reading the room and something's just not working and not going well, it's okay to go, you know what, we're only going to do 4 minutes of this, we're going to wrap it up, and then we're going to move to the next section, and I'm going to rethink how I do that section next time, because it's important content, but it didn't go well the way that I presented it. So you've got to reflect on your lesson plan as well. Next couple things I'll give you is that you want to use students to help demonstrate, parts of the lesson. So if you're in groups, you're going to be using one student to help demonstrate something to the other kids, this helps people stay engaged with your lesson plan. A final point in this section here is to be sure to include a summary of the lesson at the end and what the homework is. A really awesome thing that we did at our school was to actually film at the end of the lesson. We had teacher iPads. There's an iPad here. And so we would actually have the camera and we could film the class and go, all right, kids, let's summarize the lesson. Tony, what did we do first today? Oh, we did the warm-up with singles and doubles. Great. And what was our homework to do with that? We need to play it smoothly without speeding up and hold it steady and not get faster when we get louder. Awesome. Very good. Sarah, what did we do next? And then she summarizes what you did. So it becomes this little filmed video summary thing. And then that video could just be, they would just load it into the lesson notes. And then while they go down and collect the next class, it's all loading, they're ready for the next class. So that again makes it super simple for you to provide the summary of the lessons, and then again you're not having to type up all these extra notes. You can actually have the parents who want to know what the lesson notes were go watch the video, see it every week, and that's the way you can do it. If you prefer to type them all up, you can do that, and you can sit there with the kids and, Tony, what did we do first? Yes, we did this single stroke roll. Great. Next thing. And type it as you go. So it reminds the kids what they did, and you can finish with a fun game or challenge as well. So there are so many tips about this that you're going to learn through the BAM Squad as well, and we want to hear your cool ideas down below as well. So share, if you've got a whole lot to share, then feel free to share the bottom of this post, and if it's really great content, share it into the BAM Squad group as well, your best lesson planning tips, so everyone can benefit as well. Next couple of things we're going to talk about. What is your system for lesson planning going to be? So I've talked about we used My Music Staff. There's lots of other softwares. Opus One is a popular one. My Music Staff. You get the idea. Teacher Zone. So you want to see, is there something you're already using for your studio that can use lesson notes for and planning to make it easier, so you don't have to adapt another technology? If you're on the cheaper side and you're just trying to do everything free and as cheap as possible, Google Docs, obviously a good one that you can use, and each student can just have their own Google Doc and you just write the notes at the end of each lesson. So that's a simple way. And there's other softwares as well. So if you're using something different, do comment down below and let us know so we can add it in here. Next thing I'll talk about is, how often do you do your lesson planning? Is this something that everyone's having to do every week and planning for every lesson? Are you having to schedule time? Well, this is what we found as best practice, is we actually planned our lessons quarterly, and that was basically because our school system works on 10-week terms, 4 of them in a year, and then we get these holiday breaks in the middle. So instead of having the awkward conversations of saying, hey, you need to do lesson planning, and then some people doing 10 hours of it and some people doing 10 minutes and wanting the extra money for it, and it can lead to all sorts of complicated things. What we tried to do is say, hey, you come in the holiday break for, we would usually either do 1 or 2 half days or 1 full day, and that's where we're lesson planning for the whole next school term or quarter. Now, you might want to do it differently. You can decide. What you want to do is put boundaries around it so that you are not being taken advantage of. You don't want to give open rein to people to just say, oh, well, I'll bill you for the hours that I do for lesson planning. And then you get someone who's Mr. Harry Hardcore, and he just wants to clock up the hours, and because he cares about the students as well. And now he's billing you another 12 hours a week for lesson planning for 12 lessons. You don't want that. You want to give boundaries, and you want to train people to actually build lesson plan examples in the way that you want to do it, which lifts the quality of lessons, but is not totally exhaustive. So if you're still teaching, this is the discipline part I mentioned for you. You need to do it for your students. You need to say, all right, so I've got 17 students, and here are my lesson plans and what they look like for these kids. And I've got the rough overview for the next few months. These are the things we're working on. And it's not necessarily a lesson 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's not every single week. It's more like these are the things we're going to be working towards over this next quarter. And so you have people actually go through their role of their students. They're thinking about their classes, and they're literally making the outcomes and the list of details and things that they're going to work on for their kids. And they're trying to cross multi-purpose the content across different students to save time as well. So we would pay people to come in and prepare quarterly in advance, which is a really great way to do it because it's more of a team day, and you can put on some lunch as well. You do it in a break, so it's good for culture building. And then everyone else is preparing lessons, so then everyone shows what they've done, and you can feed in from each person so that you've kind of 10x'd the amount of preparation that you've done, and it speeds up the whole process rather than everyone individually preparing their lessons in silos, right? Couple more things to go. We're going to talk about the decisions that you need to make for your school, kind of a bit of a checklist for you. So where are you going to record the lesson notes? And you need to pretty much choose and dictate this is how we do it, because you do want to be able to track it and have a system. You don't want one teacher doing it on their own Google Doc and another teacher doing it in lesson notes in your software and someone else doing it in their own scrappy bit of paper and with a pen. You want to make sure that you've got a system, you train people your system, and everyone does it the same way. And then it's easier for you as the boss or the manager to come and step in and take a look at their notes. And it's really obvious then when someone says, oh, my lesson notes are blank, and they go, oh yeah, but I've been doing it over here. It's like, that's not how we do it here. I need you to do it in here. So if you can copy them in, and then there's no excuses, right? So where are you going to record them? What do you expect from your team in terms of how detailed are they going to be? What's your kind of format for the lesson plans that you want? You could just have that simple 3-step process that I mentioned. You could create your own version. So what are you asking from them? Next thing is, what is your curriculum strategy? There's only, I'll talk a bit about this next, but there's only 3 main kind of ways to do it. It's like either teachers are fully free to dictate how they do the curriculum per student, or it's fully dictated by you with pre-made resources, or it's a mixture in the middle. That's where we went. We've prepared a whole bunch of books, we've given them to you in the library here, in the curriculum library, but teachers were kind of weaving in and out with their own stuff for different students and group lessons, and it wasn't fully dictated. And so next thing is, where are you going to store these resources as well? We just did it for Google Drive for our teachers. So we had I can't remember what we called it, but it was something like the teacher resource center, and it was just a Google Drive with all the different instruments as categories, and then we'd store all the different game ideas and music and books and all sorts of stuff. So something like that, it's a really simple way to do it. Worked fine for us with a massive school. Could work well for you, but if you've got a different way, share it down below. We'd love to add it in as well. Final thing on a decision you need to make for how you're doing lesson planning as a school is, will the students be using some sort of homework book, or will they just be checking their kind of student portal or something else? So how are the students themselves tracking things? You've got your system, right? But how are the students tracking it? When they get home and they've forgotten what they did, where do they turn to? Do they turn to a homework book you've given and written it in, or had them write it in during lessons? Or are they logging into their portal? That's a decision you need to make. For us, we did a mixture of our on-school teams doing group lessons was all about the portal, right? Because you couldn't sit there quickly with 5 kids and do, homework books, and lots of the kids were very young as well, so they couldn't even, read and write at the level they needed to write those notes. So you got to be aware of that too. So we were doing it during the portal with the iPad videos that I mentioned. for our lessons happening with younger kids in schools during the day, and then more of the private lessons, that was where they had their homework books, and part of the end of their lesson was writing those notes in, and they were earning stickers, and they could go down to the prize cabinet and cash their stickers in for chocolate and candy and other teddy bears and skateboards and all that cool stuff, which you'll see in our gamification section here in the retention module as well. So there's another decision that you need to make, final one. And let's turn now to just some ideas and reflections on the curriculum. Now, as I mentioned, there's the three main options for curriculum. You either dictate it, they're free to create it solely on their own. You don't give the teachers any resources, or something in the middle. Definitely, this is something where people will be divided on. My opinion is you go down the middle. You give a professional looking curriculum that at least gives some structure, a professional looking book with your logo. We've given you all of the resources that we've created. Lots of BAM Squad members have added additional resources that you can grab from the curriculum library. You can commission your own covers to be made, slot them in, make the books your own, and that is going to help those, especially those younger teachers that aren't experienced. They need some structure, right? So give them structure. It helps with their lesson planning, because even the books themselves are kind of lesson plans in a sense, right? And so even if they're not prepared, the books are going to be a way better lesson. It's going to help them deliver a way better lesson than if they were just winging it without a book, right? So I'm a big fan of provide the books for at least the beginner to intermediate students, and let teachers kind of weave in and out their own stuff and exercises, and hey, this song's hip on the radio right now, or this kid wants to learn this, or it's Christmas time, we're preparing this concert. You get the idea, right? And then start to build your resource library. And we just did that with a Google Drive, and have everyone that's sharing their resources and transcriptions and books that they get from everywhere, sharing it into one place that everyone has access to. And again, that's going to be something that you need to have as part of your onboarding and training your teachers to go, here's the link when you're looking to do your curriculum planning and you're needing ideas, turn to this link and you'll be able to grab all the things that you need. All right, we've got just a few thoughts to go, and then we'll wrap this lesson up and move to the next video. Big thing I just want to say is, remember, you're trying to make it appealing for teachers to work at your music school. So teachers don't want a crazy amount of lesson planning. So don't expect these fully detailed, 2-page plans with, hey, 4 minutes in, we're going to do this, and then I've got this big test I've planned. And no, you don't want that. You just want the basics to show that there is a plan, and they're not. The worst way to start a lesson is, hey, so what do you want to learn today? You never want to hear that again. Or, hey, what do you want to learn? Or, hey, what have you been working on? Those sorts of things. You want to sit down, have structure, and if you want to have some student-directed parts of your lesson, it's built into the plan so it looks professional. Final thing I'm going to give you to think about is reviewing lesson plans. That is a really important thing for everyone to do as they reflect about lessons, and you want to train your teachers to just a bit of self-reflection. It's not sitting down, meditating over it for an hour. It's just a quick thought of, hey, am I preparing at the right level? Was my lesson plan too easy, too hard? Was it too short, too long? Did I try just jam too much in there? Was there a good range of learning styles being used? Them listening to me, them reading music, them trying to figure something out, them improvising. There's all those different things. Did it have a good range of stuff to keep it interesting? Did you talk too much, like me in this video? Or did you not talk enough? And if something fell apart in that lesson plan, what did you learn from that? What are you going to do different next time? And those are the sorts of reflection questions that they're best done with multiple teachers, like talking at the end of the day. So we'd have, each of our teams would have the little check-ins. So our on-site team in the building, they would have a meeting for the first 15 minutes of a shift. Our music bus and our schools team, they would have their team meeting right at the end of the day for the last sort of 30 minutes. And so they'd be discussing, hey, what went well, what went wrong, helping each other with little challenges. That stuff really is worth investing in. We'll talk more about that in Module 6. So there we go. That is my big overview for you on lesson planning. Again, all the notes I've put down below here, so you can copy and teach this live to your staff if you want, or you can just play them this video. But I highly recommend that you get into lesson planning for all the reasons that I've outlined, and you start to make it part of the culture of your school, culture of your teachers, because a lot of people are just not doing this. They're just hiring people, assuming they know how to teach, maybe give them a little bit of advice, and then kind of leaving them to it. But not you. You're going to build a kick-ass music school, and you've got to take all these things seriously and just build it into your culture, and it'll just raise the professionalism of your school, your teachers, and if you do that, the business grows, more students stay, the profit grows, you can pay people more, they're happier, they all want to work there. You get the idea. It's magic. So, hope you enjoyed this. Any extra comments that you've got to add to make this lesson more valuable, please comment down below or share in the group, and we will get it added into here.